Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to No Timeouts, a football show coming at you from the Score Studio. My name is Jonah Birenbaum. That is Dan Wilkins. That is Tyler McKillop. That is Justin Boone. You know them. You love them. Gentlemen, lots to talk about today. Let's just dive right in, and let's start in the city of brotherly love. The Eagles are 11-2. They haven't lost since week 4, and yet there's discord in that locker room right now. Following the Eagles' uninspiring victory over Carolina in Week 14, a game in which Jalen Hurts managed only 108 passing yards, wide receiver A.J. Brown was asked, what's wrong with the offense? And he plainly said, passing. Now, many interpreted that as a direct shot at Hurts, and then a teammate of theirs then poured gasoline on that fire by essentially confirming that there is indeed a rift, or at least there's been some relationship deterioration between Hurts and Brown. Obviously, we don't know what the inner workings of that locker room look like. We have no insight into the relationship dynamics there. But, Wilkie, what do you make of this drama that is very much giving Donovan McNabb and Terrell Owens right now? What's your impression of this Eagles rift?
Yeah, I think that the personal aspect may have been a little bit blown out of proportion. We can't speak to what's going on in the locker room, but I do think the reality is that the Eagles need more of their quarterback right now. They're not getting what they should be getting out of this passing game. You look at it, this is a dream scenario for a quarterback. You have the best offensive line in football, you have an MVP candidate at running back, and you have 2 legitimate number 1 receivers on the outside. And you said it, we're coming out of a closely contested game against the Panthers where they have all of 108 passing yards. I mean, at some point, we have to stop making excuses for a quarterback who's making $51 million a year. Don't get me wrong, we've seen legitimately great play from Jalen Hurts in the past. What we saw from him in the Super Bowl against the Chiefs was pretty much as good as it gets for quarterback play. But where has that been for the last 2 years? To me, he's always been a guy who has the potential to kind of limit what you're able to do from a pure passing perspective, just from his issues from the pocket specifically. He's been able to overcome those over the years at times just with his ability to push the ball downfield, make big plays in the passing game. But you turn on the tape and he's turning down a lot of those opportunities now. And it's really tough to watch. So don't get me wrong, you can win with the way that they're playing right now. The running game is that good. The defense is that good. They don't need Jalen Hurts to be an elite quarterback for them to compete for a Super Bowl. But it really would be nice if a quarterback you're paying this much money, you could have some level of confidence that he can really put the team on his back when you have to put the ball in his hands. And right now, that's not really the case. I fear that at some point that is going to come up. So far this season, the Eagles have 17 points in the first quarter. That is easily the worst number in the NFL, right below the Bears for last. I mean, so far they've gotten away with it. They've been able to overcome these slow starts, but you get to the playoffs and you do this against a team like the Lions, you're going to fall in a big hole and find yourself in a super pass-heavy script where you can't lean on that run game. And what we've seen from the passing game so far, I don't know that they're going to be up to the task in getting back in those games and staying alive.
I don't want to overreact. So the Panthers have been playing a little bit better recently. Teams have been known to have a game where maybe they overlook an opponent like that and then they have a down week. So I don't want to overreact too much. To me, I agree with a lot of the things you're saying, that maybe the ceiling for Jalen Hurts isn't quite as big as some of the other quarterbacks that are making the kind of money he is. I really think the problem with the Eagles going back to last year and some of these issues, it's the coach. It's Sirianni. I don't think he has complete control and complete authority in that locker room. We've seen this pop up so many times. He carries himself, I hate to say it, a little bit like a clown. We see the way he deals with fans, sometimes the way he's talking to the media, and we constantly hear these little rifts in the locker room pop up. Do you think that would happen if Mike Tomlin were the coach of the Philadelphia Eagles? I don't think so. I think it comes down to him. I think he should be the one taking charge, getting more out of these guys, and making sure that offense is changing what they're doing early in the game so that they're scoring points in the first quarter. I would really like to see more out of Sirianni to squash some of the ridiculous stuff that comes out of Philadelphia.
Yeah, I do think the first quarter thing, sometimes people can make a little bit too much out of early game scripts because different teams handle them different ways, right? Some teams come out with a script being okay, we're going to see how defenses defend this and we're going to go from there. In some cases, that might be what the Eagles are doing. I just think from a coaching perspective, you go back to last year, everyone was zeroing in on the offensive coordinator, looking at the scheme that was pretty much the same that Hurts had thrived with in the past. Just shots down the field, right? He was a go ball merchant to Hurts or to Brown and Smith. They were awesome at doing that. And we heard that this year you're handing it over to Kellen Moore. He's going to open up the offense. There's going to be so much more opportunity for other things, middle of the field. But that's not really ever been Jalen Hurts' game, right? His game has been that stuff down the sideline, just, throwing go balls to their alpha receivers. And, we're kind of seeing that this new offense isn't really doing any better for him. So, I mean, he just kind of is what he is. Great player, obviously deserved the contract that he got, but right now in this offense, he's not really elevating it, and that's a problem for me.
I'm curious if you guys agree with this. I think over the last 2 years since the Super Bowl run, he's less been willing to use his legs and run the ball, which helps open up the downfield passing game. And yes, you have Saquon Barkley. Technically, you're probably going to see more teams stack the box and give you those opportunities to push the ball downfield. But I also feel that Jalen he's not the same style of runner he was 2 years ago, and that he's willing to see contact, willing to make plays, where he's accepting contact, I guess, and more looking to slide or get those easy yards in the ground game if he does keep the ball. I don't think that'll ever change because I think he is protecting himself and his body, and he's probably not thinking it in the course of a game of I'm not willing to put myself on the line to win football games. I'd rather protect myself, but I do think subconsciously that's something that has been integrated with him over the last 2 years since that Super Bowl run too, and since he's gotten the bag.
He has looked a little bit better as a runner this year. Last year, you could tell he was playing hurt. I think that was an issue. This year has looked a little bit better, but to me, it's not quite the same as it was 2 years ago. He kind of looks like a different player, and I don't know, man. I do worry for their ceiling in the playoffs. If, like I said, if you end up in that situation where you're putting the ball specifically in his hands and you're kind of taking it out of Saquon Barkley's hands, I don't know how that's going to work out for them.
That's a very good point.
Yeah,
very good.
We'll see. I mean, look, to your point, to this point in the season, it hasn't burned them, right? They're 8th in the NFL in points per game, and they're top 10 in third down percentage, red zone touchdown percentage, but their schedule has been very easy, and the playoffs are a different animal. So we'll see what happens with these Eagles, but it's definitely something to keep an eye on, something that has the football world pretty enthralled right now. Now, one team that has unequivocally gotten more out of its quarterback than anyone expected is Minnesota. Sam Darnold. He is 3rd in the NFL in passer rating. He's tied for 3rd in passing touchdowns, and he has the Vikings flirting, at least, with the possibility of putting up their 2nd best regular season ever after only their 15-1 1998 campaign. And yet, Boone, you would caution teams against throwing the bag at Sam Darnold in free agency this offseason. Why?
I think it's the environment that's really helping him. And, maybe that's a take that seems silly now based on the way they're playing. But even the way you worded that, I don't think we should give a ton of the credit on the success of this team just to Sam Darnold. I think it's Kevin O'Connell. I think it's Justin Jefferson. I think it's the other pieces on that offense and really on that entire team that are playing really well and helping Sam Darnold look as good as he's ever looked in his career. And it's interesting to me that, and I know they drafted J.J. McCarthy this year, so they're expecting that at some point he's going to take over. But it's interesting the way the team's talking about this. They already sound like they're not bringing him back. Like there's essentially they haven't said it publicly, but they're really suggesting that they're not planning to bring him back and that, he's going to go off into free agency and we'll see what happens. And NFL teams, we've seen it with GMs before. They watch a guy have success like this. They attribute so much of that to him, and then they sign him to a big contract. And I am so worried that there's going to be a NFL GM out there on a team that is, very quarterback needy. They're in the market for one. They're going to look at Darnold and go, this is the best option out there. And they're going to sign him to a big deal. And if he gets, if they think he's going to be the next, late career QB breakout, Geno Smith we've seen in the last few years, or Baker Mayfield, Baker Mayfield signed what, a 3-year, $100 million contract? I think that would be terrible if a team signs Darnold to something like that. If you want to bring him in to be just that stopgap quarterback and you also draft somebody to take over, I'm okay with that. But if you think he's going to be the answer, you also better be bringing along Kevin O'Connell and Justin Jefferson and some of those other guys, because I don't think Darnold's going to be able to do this. And based on your face, I'm wondering if you guys agree with me or not.
No, I agree. And I kind of think that it is going to happen. I mean, look at the Vikings this year and last year. You mentioned the system. He's been better than Kirk Cousins was the last 2 years, right? Like all the production that he's going to put up is way beyond anything that Kirk Cousins did. Sam Darnold had 5 touchdowns this past week, was it? That's the first time a Vikings quarterback has done that since Dante Culpepper in 2004. So that means Kirk Cousins never did it. I mean, he's going to come in off this huge year. They might go on a deep playoff run, maybe the NFC Championship game. That might be their ceiling. But I don't know. Is he going to get the Sam Darnold, or sorry, is he going to get the Kirk Cousins contract? Again, I would not be in favor of that, but the quarterback market's a little crazy, so I don't know that we can rule it out.
Yeah, the peaks and valleys are there with Darnold. Like, there's been really good stretches, but just before this recent really good stretch, there was a stretch where the offensive play for this team wasn't that good.
Yeah.
There's nothing more valuable than a rookie contract, is like when you're talking to Minnesota. So, like, I think Darnold's best fit is coming back, and the question is, like you said, it doesn't feel like they're interested in doing that. But again, it is a quarterback coming off a torn ACL. There's got to be some sort of insurance policy there.
I feel like that's what Daniel Jones was, right? When they brought in Daniel Jones.
Maybe.
He's going to be like the veteran backup.
That's
Not
actually,
that he's a
yeah,
great
that's a good
option,
point.
but I think that's probably why they did that, because they knew Darnold's not going to come back.
Daniel Jones did beat Kevin O'Connell's team a couple of years ago in the postseason, so it's possible. I definitely think that's probably the better idea for this team, but I honestly think a lot of other NFL teams are thinking the same way. Like, I don't think there's anyone thinking they're going to give Sam Darnold the Baker Mayfield contract.
I think it has to be a team who is not in a position to draft a quarterback. So one of those like middle of the road teams who finds itself needing a quarterback, and
The Jets.
oddly enough,
Jets.
Jets. Yeah, it might be them, but they can't pay Sam Darnold, right? So I don't know. I don't know who's going to do it, but it feels like someone will.
I was also trying to get a sense of who the prospective suitors would be, and the list was so thin. It was like, go back to the Jets, maybe Pittsburgh if they decide not to bring back Russell Wilson.
Yeah.
Cleveland, if they decide to move, essentially punt on Deshaun Watson and bring in, another veteran stopgap quarterback. And I don't know.
It could be like if Matt Stafford retires, then that's something that Sean McVay would be interested in. Similar system.
Yeah.
You have the good receivers that you can lean on and a good run game. I think it could work, but ideally you're not paying Sam Darnold $40 million a year. That's not how you want to be building a team.
I don't think that's
wasn't good before Kevin O'Connell, and I would bet that he's not going to be good after Kevin O'Connell.
We'll see. One guy we haven't talked about in a long time is Bryce Young. Things were looking real grim for the 2023 number 1 overall pick earlier this year. He was benched 2 games into his sophomore season. We were wondering if this might be the end of the Bryce Young era in Carolina. Fast forward to late in the season, and things are trending upwards for Bryce. Since regaining the starting job in Week 8, he has quietly put together the finest stretch of play in his young NFL career. Since Week 8, he's averaged more than 212 passing yards per game on 60% efficiency, 7 touchdowns to 4 interceptions, not blowing your hair back, but solid play, at least by the pretty low standard that he set as a rookie. T, where are you at now with Bryce Young and his outlook?
I think if you're a Panthers fan, you have to be really excited, because I think we're at a point where we can feel that Bryce Young is the present, and at the very least, I would say at least the short-term future, maybe the long-term future. The surface level numbers aren't blowing you away. He's ranking about 30th in the league in completion percentage and yards per attempt since his return. So the numbers aren't too impressive, but underlying numbers are actually really good. He has 16 big-time throws. If you don't know what those are, it's a PFF stat that kind of looks at balls that you throw downfield with anticipation and accuracy and in contested windows. That's something we didn't see from Bryce last year. He's got 16. That's already matched what he had last year in half the pass attempts. So he's more confident. He's pushing the ball downfield a lot more. He actually has his pass attempts of 20-plus yards is up 5% from last year. It was around 9%. Now it's at 14%. And that completion percentage is still not too bad and better than last year. So he's more confident. That is clear, and that's a huge thing for any quarterback in this league. And he's not throwing to even a top 50 pass catcher in the NFL right now. So that can only improve. And I think for Carolina, they can sit here, this front office can say, all right, we're comfortable at quarterback. We can look to assess other areas in the roster. And man, the competition for T. Higgins is going to be fierce this offseason, and the Panthers are probably going to be in it. They could add a Ted McMillan in the draft. They could add a couple other receivers, Luther Burden, obviously Travis Hunter as well. I think this team has to feel good about Bryce Young, because I think he's playing with a lot of confidence. And when he's played with confidence, I really like him as a player, because he has great footwork. He throws with great anticipation and accuracy. And I think he can be an upper half quarterback in this league. He's not playing like it quite yet, but he's showing the signs to progress, which I think is great.
I mean, I'm glad you're talking up Bryce Young, but I would even go farther than that. Over the last however many games, I think he looks like a legitimate franchise quarterback. I am all in on Bryce Young again, because he's showing all the things that made him such an interesting prospect coming out of Alabama. I think it was easy to throw in the towel on him last year because it did not look good, and then we're all left saying, oh my God, he might be too small. Like, this is not going
Yeah.
to work. But, you know, he started the year off rough. The first 2 games looked a lot like last year. Then they sit him down. It seemed like sitting on the sidelines, just taking a step back, allowed him to kind of regain that confidence. Maybe kind of like work past some issues that were lingering from the really bad supporting cast last year. It's not great this year, but it's much better. I think he's a lot more comfortable, like you said. And you're just seeing the playmaker gene come out again, which was such a big part of who he was at Alabama. Just like that playmaker mentality, that vision, like when a play breaks down, he's facing pressure in the pocket. He's able to evade the rush, keep his eyes downfield, and make plays downfield. So I'm all in on him as a quarterback and looking to the future. And, you know, earlier this season, I think we were probably talking about whether they were going to dump him for a mid-round pick. I think he's the unquestioned starter moving forward, and the Panthers should feel great about it.
Yeah, props to Dave Canales too, like doing it again with a quarterback. I don't know. I look at this one though. I will agree that I do think that he has a potential. I think you said top half of the league kind of starter franchise. But I'm looking at him like I think the ceiling is still like QB 10 to QB 16, like in that kind of Trevor Lawrence zone where like he could be good, but I don't think he's ever going to be like elite. I don't think he's ever going to get up in the top echelon, but certainly a guy that, I don't know what other options they're really going to have at this point. I think they probably want to stick it out with him and see what he can do, and hopefully they can bring in some more weapons. That would be incredible if they end up getting. I don't know that T. Higgins will want to go there. I think T. Higgins, but maybe the almighty dollar will come down and decide it for him.
I'm a huge C.J. Stroud fan, and I would rather have C.J. Stroud moving forward, of course.
Certainly.
But if Bryce Young finishes this year playing the way he has over the last 6-8 weeks, whatever it's been since he's come back, he's probably having the same second year that C.J. Stroud is, maybe. I mean, And look, and C.J. Stroud is a much better supporting cast. The offensive line is a whole different situation, but I think that we're rightfully starting to turn around the conversation on Bryce Young, and he deserves it.
Well, let's turn around the conversation with this. We haven't done this in a little while. A little game of Would You Rather Bryce Young edition, and I think we're going to get to that comp that some of you have been making. So here we go. For the next 3 seasons, would you rather have Bryce Young or Anthony Richardson?
He starts with
You got to start off with that one.
Coming in hot.
Anthony Richardson.
I will take Bryce Young.
As much as I think Wilkins has gotten a little ridiculous with his Anthony Richardson love, and I still like Richardson, but we were talking before the show, I think he's way too in still on Anthony Richardson. He can get there, but the reason I'm going to pick Richardson is the ceiling. It's the ceiling, and that's what we were talking about before the show. If he hits the ceiling, he can be the better quarterback. It's getting very slim that he's going to actually be able to get through and get there.
Still believe.
Bryce Young or Will Levis?
Bryce Young.
Yeah, Bryce Young.
Yeah, it's got to be Bryce Young.
Clean sweep. Bryce Young or Bo Nix?
Bryce Young. Not close.
Bryce Young for me too.
Yeah, I'm still going Bryce Young there.
Wow. Bryce Young or Drake May?
That's a good question.
Drake May.
Yeah, I will say Drake May.
Has to be Drake May.
Bryce Young or Trevor Lawrence?
Trevor Lawrence still, but this is still a pro Bryce Young take that it's close. Yeah.
I'm Trevor Lawrence. Yeah.
I'm actually going to say Bryce Young. I'm just not as impressed. Like, Lawrence is good, but again, we just haven't seen the ceiling from it. It's been a while now, right? Like, he's been around for a long time. At least with Bryce Young, it's the mystery box. Like, he still has the chance to be more. So I'm going to give him the slight edge.
All right. And you guys obviously preempted this bad boy. Bryce Young or C.J. Stroud?
It's still Stroud, but it's closer than we all thought last year, and the Panthers are kind of not looking so dumb for the decision they made. I would rather have Stroud, but it's closer than we all thought it was going to be.
I mean, they still made a significant trade to get him.
That's true. Yeah, you're right.
Forgetting the acquisition costs. Just,
I mean, they needed to trade up to that spot regardless, but it's still Stroud, but Bryce Young's been good, man.
I'm taking C.J. Stroud for sure.
Yeah.
It's still Stroud, but for me, like, in the offseason, Stroud is going to be one of the things that I'm most excited to, like, delve into because I know the offensive line issues. I'm shocked at kind of how poorly he's played some weeks. Kind of boggles the mind, but, it's still Stroud.
I do think the thing with Stroud is, you can't totally chalk it up to everything that's going on around him, but I think that that's the main thing, and it's kind of like you look back at how Bryce struggled last year, just like everything is crumbling around him and his play drops off as a result. I think that's what's happening with CJ, where it's like The offensive line, the protection schemes are just so bad. He has no chance on like half his passing reps. And I think that does affect you on the plays where you should have a chance and you don't quite look like the same quarterback. I think he's a future like top 5 quarterback, so that's why I'd take him over Bryce Young. But Bryce Young to me is like a future top, like Boone said, I think 10, 12. I think that's within the realm of
Somewhere in
possibility.
that range.
Wow. Serious helium for Bryce Young, for a guy who's thrown 7 touchdowns to 4 interceptions.
What a hater, eh?
Joe, me and Joe.
Hey, I don't know, man. Anyways, gentlemen, this is obviously an NFL show first and foremost, but we would be remiss if we didn't at least touch on the historic college football playoff that is about to get underway. This year, for the first time ever, the CFP will feature 12 teams, a huge increase from the traditional 4. Those 12 teams have already been selected by the committee. We know what the field looks like, but T, as our resident college football guy, I'm going to kind of hand the reins to you for this. Just to kick things off then, maybe you can explain to us how this year's tournament is going to work.
Yeah, so we'll treat this as like a college football for dummies. For a lot of people, I'm sure you're going to be watching this over the holiday season, and you definitely should be if you're interested in any players coming up into the NFL. But you mentioned it, the 12-team format's brand new, but it's not 1 through 12. It's not the 12 best teams ranked 1 through 12. There's 4 teams that have a bye, and they're not the 4 best teams in the country. So they give byes to the 4 conference champions. They wanted to keep value in conference championship games and playing them. But ultimately, it kind of hurt if you look at the bracket. You look at Boise State, who was actually the 9th ranked team in the country, and Arizona State was the 12th ranked team in the country. They got byes. And the number 1 team, Oregon, undefeated season, 13-0. Their path isn't actually one that rewards the number 1 team. So this could be the last time we even see the 12 team. They might expand, make some changes, but it's a really exciting field. So what I wanted to do is take for each of you guys a team that I think you're most likely or should pay attention to based on what I know about you guys. Boone's easy for me because he's our fantasy guy. Ohio State would be the team for me because you look at Emeka Egbuka, receiver for Ohio State, who's going to be a first-round pick. You have the 2 running backs in Quinshon Judkins and Travion Henderson. Those are 2 guys that are going to be going day 2, maybe day 3 picks, but Henderson's a great pass catcher. Judkins a great in-between the tackles runner. Those are going to be important fantasy pieces, I would think, next year. For Wilkins, I warned him that he might not like this, but I'm going with Penn State.
I knew you were going to. I like it. I love it.
See,
I love it.
Let's go. So Drew Aller,
Yep.
the quarterback for Penn State, has had I would say a rocky 3 years, but he's got the prototypical size, arm talent that people are going to be interested in. And now, after the conference championship game against Oregon, he's starting to rise. Like, people are seeing him as maybe a Pittsburgh Steelers pick in the back end of the first type of hype. See, I'm not there. This is where it's not an Anthony Richardson comparison because they're very different players. But Aller's got arm talent. My problem is the mental side of his game. He made a lot of crucial mistakes in that conference championship game, and he's not really one to push the ball down the field too much. But when he does, he has done it pretty successfully.
Sounds like a guy who should sit behind Sam Darnold for a year.
Potentially. I'm not there, but I figured Wilkins might be a little excited about him, so definitely one for Wilkins. And then I'm struggling. I'm like, what do I do with Jonah? And it hit me. I'm like, our baseball guy talking football. So why don't I go with the basketball school that's having a great year on the football field, Indiana. It was just reported that they spent potentially top 10 in NIL money this year, which was a shock because they're not really a football school. Had a great year. Canadian quarterback, Curtis Rourke, who's had an awesome season as a transfer. So Indiana would be the team for you, I think.
Go Hoosiers, baby.
Just being with not really a typical football school. But what I want to do, too, is if you take a look, we're probably going to show the bracket to you guys, but some players that I'm looking out for.
Yeah, who are some guys that, I mean, obviously this is going to showcase a whole bunch of talent that's going to be, in the near-term future playing in the NFL, but who are some guys who are just absolutely must-watch in the CFP?
Yeah, so Jeremiah Smith at Ohio State, that is a guy, if you're playing in Devy leagues in fantasy, he's a freshman that led Ohio State in receiving. He's probably the best receiver in the playoff. I don't think there's a guy better than him. Just massive 6'3", 6'4" receiver that can just make any play on the field. Loves to catch balls with one hand. You'll probably see that more often than not. Ashton Genty, everybody knows about, I think. Heisman, and probably going to finish second in Heisman voting, not win the Heisman. Almost broke the single-season record in rushing. The numbers are just ridiculous. My favorite, though, is Cam Scadaboo. This is a guy you'll see in the second round. He's going to get the Christian McCaffrey comparisons because he had over 2,000 all-purpose yards, 500 receiving yards to 1,500 rushing yards. Jeez. Didn't get invited to the Heisman ceremony, which is, I think, unfair. But last year, Arizona State was picked to be, this year, the worst team in the conference. Won the conference. He, last year, was a wildcat quarterback for them a lot of the time because the roster was so depleted. One of my favorite players and maybe the best name you could possibly say.
Yeah, that's good stuff. And I know that you filled out a bracket
I did.
because you got the gift, you got the clairvoyance. Who do you got?
You got Penn State winning?
I have
No, this is the Hoosiers' year, baby.
I have Penn State. You guys will get to look at, and you can tell me what you think. I have Penn State making it a good bit because they match up really well with a potential matchup with Boise State because they got a great run defense. Georgia, though, Carson Beck has a UCL injury. He might not even play, and I don't like this Georgia team very much. So I have a Notre Dame, Oregon Conference Championship. Oregon has the best offense in the country. It's not particularly close. And I think they have a 16-0 season on their hands, which would be the first in the history of the sport since they haven't had this big playoff ever.
I love that you gave me Ohio State until I saw that you have them going out in the first
Yeah.
round here. Come on now.
Oh yeah, I'm very worried. It's a tough game for them. They don't have the quarterback play. Like as excited as you could be about some of the weapons, their quarterback play isn't really good. And home games for the first round, and Ohio State's in a really tough spot with their head coach because they lost to Michigan to close the season.
I'm so excited about this playoff format because I hated how in college football for the longest time, if you lost a game or two, you were just done.
Yeah.
So it's still live for all these teams. The one thing that you pointed out, though, the way that the 12 team works and how being the 1 seed isn't that great.
No.
It's crazy to me that Big Ten championship game, Oregon beats Penn State, but Penn State, as a result, gets to play SMU and then Boise State and then Notre Dame. That's a pretty decent path all the way to the
100%.
final, honestly. And then Oregon has to go through the winner of Ohio State, Tennessee, and then play Texas as well. That's tough.
No,
My-
they're
it-
going to change it. I think.
If this bracket materializes, my dad is going to need some serious consoling because he is a diehard Notre Dame fan. And the
Nice.
last time they were in the national championship, he didn't get out of bed for a very long time.
Well, I think he'd be happy. Let him know. I'm kind of backing them here.
I don't know.
I think they got a chance.
Okay, all right, that'll be some consolation at least. Awesome stuff, T. That was great. Really looking forward to the college football playoff. I think this year's format's going to be really, really fun. But that's enough college football talk. Let's get back to what really matters. Week 15 in the NFL because we got a whole bunch of awesome games on tap this week. Wilkie, which game are you most looking forward to?
Oh, I'll keep this quick. It's Bills-Lions. It's obvious this is a potential Super Bowl preview. We know the Bills can score on anyone. We saw it last week. Josh Allen, clear MVP candidate, became the first player in NFL history to throw for 3 touchdowns and run for 3 touchdowns in the same game. The only problem was they still lost because they got beat up so bad on the defensive side. So I'm really interested to see how they respond against the Lions, who are not a great matchup for the Bills. We know they beat up opponents on the ground. The Bills are giving up 4.7 yards per carry. Is there a way they can get creative and kind of slow down that offense? Or can Josh Allen just outscore the Lions by himself anyway? I'm not ruling it out. If they even come close, I'm all in on this team going all the way to the Super Bowl. They're so much fun.
Two things kind of mean the same thing. I'm terrified of playing any Bills or Lions players in your first round of your fantasy playoffs. I know I'm playing Josh Allen in one of them. And is there problems with this Bills defense when they're playing indoors or in decent weather? Because, man, they got torched last week.
They really did.
They need to get it. McDermott needs to prove that this isn't just a regular season defense and one that can match up with
I will say,
postseason
I
teams.
think that coming out of that week, more so than the Bills defense, we should be talking about how good the
100%.
Rams offense is
100%.
and how that team is primed to make a run, and they could chase down the Seahawks for the NFC West. That's still on the table at the end of the year. So I'm very excited about them. But yeah, that was a wild game.
It was. T.
Yeah, you want to go from high-flying offense? Let me show you defense because I don't think there's going to be a lot of points in Eagles and Steelers because you have an Eagles defense with Fangio that's just built to contain explosive plays through the air. We know Russ loves to chase those. And the Steelers also just love to run the ball on early downs. And they're one of the worst rushing teams in early downs, too. And the Eagles are the #1 team in EPA per play against the run on first down. So I don't think the Steelers offense is going to move the ball much at all. But at the same time, I mean, we picked on the Steelers, or at least I shouldn't say we, the show was not existing last season, but I picked on the Steelers defense a lot from not being good against the run. They're actually 4th in the league in EPA against the run. They've been good against the run, so maybe they hold Saquon in check. And I mean, Hurts' numbers through the air have not been good against cover 3 defenses, which you're going to see a lot from the Steelers. So I don't think this game, it's like a total of, I think, 41.5. I think we might see this game total in like the 30s.
Still a little early in the week, but I start to look at the weather around this time
True.
on Thursday, and potentially some rain in that one too, which could kind of muck things up a little.
And no Pickens too, so.
We got to get him on the board with a meteorologist report one of these days.
Yeah, he's like meteorologist and schedule guy.
Yeah.
You know, he wears many hats. But this game is honestly the football equivalent of the Paul Rudd, hey, look at us meme. Because the Steelers coming into the year, expectations were very low. Philly obviously was coming off that disastrous collapse last year. And now look at them. Pittsburgh is 10-3 on the verge of clinching.
Yeah.
Philly is 11-2, and they've already clinched. Hey, look at us. Look at us. Boone, what's the game you're most looking forward to?
Packers Seahawks, two playoff teams. I think everybody's going to talk about the strength versus strength. The Packers offense, and Matt LaFleur does such a good job scheming them up, versus the Seahawks defense that's really started to come on under Mike McDonald in the second half of the season here. But I think it's the other matchup that's going to be more interesting to me. It's going to be the Green Bay defense against the Seahawks offense, because Green Bay, they've had some injuries, but they should get Jair Alexander back this week. They've struggled to kind of get consistent pressure on opposing quarterbacks, and Geno Smith, when he's been clean, has been pretty good this year. And fantasy-wise, hasn't had a great season, hasn't scored a lot of touchdowns, but he's second in passing yards this year. Unless the Packers, and we've talked about this before, unless they can continue to thrive on turnovers and they can get some picks or they can force a fumble or two, I actually like the Seahawks to win this game, as good as the Packers have been. And the Packers, it's so strange when you look at what they've done this year, because their losses are really to good teams. And their wins, they don't have a lot of like super quality wins, but I still think they're a really good team. But if I had to pick right now, I think the Seahawks are going to take this game.
How do you feel about Ken Walker? Zach Charbonnet had the big week last week. Walker's had a really down year. I've been super excited about him to really pop off at some point in his NFL career. Maybe I kind of starting to think Charbonnet is their better option potentially.
Yeah, there's a lot of ways we could break this down. We can spend a lot of time on it, but just quickly, I do agree. I think Charbonnet is the better option. Walker's kind of like that big play merchant. I think he would almost be better as like the change of pace guy in there. They're both really good backs, though. I don't think that Walker's going to play this week. It sounds pretty negative about him coming off missing last week's game. They're not talking about him getting back to practice. Now, again, we're recording this on Thursday afternoon, so we'll see if he gets out there today. But they're talking about doing more testing on him, and you'll wonder, after how good Charbonnet looked last week,
what's the point?
That buys them some time. Why not give Charbonnet at least another game here and see what he can do? I don't think Walker's going to be back in long term. I think if Walker comes back in the next couple of weeks, how do you just go back to him being the workhorse? I think it would have to be some sort of split. That would be the smartest approach. And we see so many teams doing that now, which makes it very difficult for me projecting in fantasy.
Walker's leash is super long. Like I think they have a real affinity for him, because I think Charbonnet has been better most of the year, but it's kind of always been when Walker's healthy, Walker's their one.
Yeah, Walker was hot early in the season. I wonder if he was dealing with an injury like longer than they kind of let on, because he hadn't really put up a big game in a while, kind of since their bye. So it was really nice to see Charbonnet. But there's other factors, like I said, the offensive line, the scheme, like there's some scheme changes they made. Like there's a lot of things that go into Charbonnet playing well last week, but he's always been a great back. And there's so many of these situations around the league where these really good running backs get drafted to be backups behind other guys.
Yeah.
You know, we're seeing even in New York, and I know we're not supposed to bring up the Jets, but even in New York in that backfield where they have Breece Hall, they have two really good rookies in Braylon Allen and Isaiah Davis, and now we're getting to see those guys play, and they're having a lot of success with Breece on the sidelines.
All right. Got to cut you off there because you mentioned the Jets. Gentlemen, before we do some trivia and get out of here, I want to dust off a classic no timeout segment, buying or selling. You know how it works. Let's start here. Bill Belichick, arguably the most accomplished coach in the history of the NFL, is putting on the headset once again for the University of North Carolina. He just yesterday agreed to be the head coach of the Tar Heels. Not a career move that any of us anticipated, but here we are. Wilkie, let me ask you, are you buying or selling Bill Belichick to be a successful college coach?
I don't know, man. This is so hard for me. It is so weird. I am going to buy, because just based on coaching chops, I think he immediately walks in and he's the best coach in the country. Just from a scheme and game planning standpoint, I don't think there's anyone else in college football who can do what he does, especially on the defensive side of the ball. just no one that they play is going to be as well prepared as these teams. The only thing that gives me pause is I don't know that it's super easy for someone who has spent a lifetime in the NFL to just walk into this increasingly complex college football landscape. We saw last year Chip Kelly step down as the UCLA head coach. He was looking for an offensive coordinator job in the NFL, didn't get one, ended up taking one with Ohio State. This year, Gus Malzahn leaves UCF. He's going to be the offensive coordinator at Florida State. These guys, especially these veteran guys, are realizing, I just want to coach. I don't want to deal with all this other stuff.
Yeah.
Yep.
Now, you can tell me that Belichick's going to have this big staff that's going to handle recruiting and NIL and transfer portal stuff. That's great. But when your first hire on that front is to make Mike Lombardi your general manager, that immediately saps any optimism I have for that arrangement. So, again, I am going to buy because I'm betting on the coach. Like you said, he's the GOAT. But I do think that it's going to take some time to build this program. And I wouldn't be surprised if before long he realizes there's a lot more to coaching at this level than I think he thinks he's getting in leaving the NFL. And I just don't know how much patience he's going to have for that at 72 years old. So I'm not sure it's going to work out, but it's going to be fascinating either way.
I will say, though, if Tom Brady decides to do a master's degree at Chapel Hill, UNC is going to be really dangerous, really dangerous. I want to ask a follow-up. Do you see this as Bill Belichick retiring any hope he might have of returning to coach in the NFL, or do you see this as his circuitous path back to the NFL?
I mean, I don't think that I don't think he set out being like, I'm going to go back and coach in the NFL. I think this is a product of knowing that there was no real options for him in the NFL. I think the NFL is kind of done with the Patriot way. By the same token, I think there was a piece from Seth Wickersham this morning just talking about how Bill Belichick was just done with the NFL's BS, as he put it in no uncertain terms. I think that he was just kind of done with like what he called the politics of it. I'm not sure he's going to find greener pastures in
Absolutely
I'm famously apolitical college football.
I don't think he's going to find what he's looking for in college football, but yeah, I don't think teams are going to look at like what he does in college football and be like, man, we got to get Belichick back now. I don't think there was any uncertainty about his ability as a coach, so I don't think he could go win a national championship. I don't think any team's going to be like, wow, we got to get him back now.
Yep.
This isn't for. I don't think this is for him. Like, this is a 3-year deal he's got with UNC, $10 million a year. He's trying to get his son. Like, that's the plan, is that his son takes over when he's done. And to be honest with you, his son's been really good in college football. Like, he was the DC at Washington, a Washington team that lost basically their entire roster from the team that went to the national championship. And they were the best pass defense in the entire country. They weren't very good against the run, but against the pass, they were really good with not a lot of talent. And this was a school that made the move from the Pac-12 to the Big Ten. So I think it's a good move for UNC as a school. I think Bill, depends on your definition of success, because UNC they haven't won a ACC championship in like 40 years or something. I think since the 80s. So, I mean, I don't think it's going to work out the way some might think that don't pay attention to college, but it's a good thing for the school, and I think it's what Bill wants, is probably to move on, and I don't think he's coming back.
And I think even though I'm casting some doubt on the recruiting abilities of just like assembling an NFL Patriot staff and getting these high school kids to come in, I do think that, Belichick being who he is does do kind of the work itself.
100%.
Like if you want to look at these kids and say, if you want to get to the NFL, like no one's going to prepare you for that better than we will, and he's going to be right about that. It's just a weird thing all around for me. It's going to take some getting used to, and I don't know that he's going to be around to fully, like, that he's going to want to stick around to see this whole thing through, because it's going to take a while. But I saw the funniest tweet yesterday after the move, just saying that I can't remember who posted it, but they said, can't wait to see the look on Belichick's face when he sees Dabo Swinney run down the hill full speed before a game. Like, it's just the completely different vibe from the NFL, and it doesn't seem like it's his thing. But
it certainly seems, though, like the way you described it, like it was more of like, no, I'm breaking up with you between him and the NFL, right? Because I just don't think there was any team out there. We've talked about before, his demise was as a personnel guy, not as a coach. I don't think any team was ready to give him all of that. And that's probably why he was mad and decided, I'll go to college where I do have control. I also think, and I just want to mention this before we get off the topic of Belichick, I think his ex-players really did him a disservice. Like, they all kind of talked to him. At times, they were very nice and said, like, he was a good coach and whatnot. But we saw, like, Brady and Edelman and Gronk all kind of make fun of him. And I'm not talking about the roast. I'm talking about just on podcasts and whatnot, and talk negatively about some of the coaching aspects that he brought to the table. And I wonder if that kind of changed the perception around the league from this guy's an incredible coach to, like, do we really want this old guy that all these younger players don't like? I think that's really unfortunate that those guys did that to him.
Well, even what was Brady's? Brady was kind of making fun of the idea of
he's done so
Belichick
much.
recruiting in college. I think he said something this past weekend to the effect of like, "Oh, like he's going to be recruiting," and he's like, "Yeah, listen, we don't care if you want to come here or not.
Yeah.
We'll find out if you want to play." And I'm like, okay.
Well, there's
Playing hard to get.
Yeah.
I like that. We got to move on, gentlemen. Sorry to cut the Bill chat short. We talked about him on last week's show, Jameis Winston. His play has been pretty Jameis-esque, we've said, since he took over for Deshaun Watson in Cleveland, but you can't say he hasn't been fun to watch. Boone, are you buying or selling Jameis to re-sign with the Browns and be their starter in 2025?
I'm like tentatively buying. I'm buying it because I want to buy it. Like, my heart is buying it. My head says this is the Browns, and there's just no possible way that the Browns are going to do the right thing and actually bring him back. But he has made things fun again. Think about watching Browns games when Deshaun was under center. Did anybody here enjoy it?
No.
Absolutely not. It was awful. The fan base was upset about it. It just, the whole vibe around that team was terrible. And then Jameis gets out there and he's weird and he's goofy, but man, he can throw the ball and it's a ton of fun when he's under center. He's basically single-handedly revived the careers of Jerry Jeudy and Elijah Moore. These guys that came out as interesting prospects and really hadn't done that much in their careers. Cedric Tillman might be back this week. He was balling before he got hurt. Could see him really have a strong finish to the season if he gets back healthy here. So yes, please, Cleveland, do the right thing. Keep Jameis out there. It will be so much fun. I'm looking at it from that perspective. Is it the best move football-wise? Probably not, but I'm not sure what other move they're going to have in their back pocket in terms of addressing the quarterback position. So let's do another year with Jameis. Let's have that team be a really fun team. And then down the road, you might have to address the position. But still, please, I want to buy this.
I'm cool with the fun of it. Either way, you can't start Deshaun Watson, but I don't know. If they have a high pick, are you really going to pass on the opportunity to draft a quarterback just so you can start Jameis Winston again? I don't know. He's been fun. He hasn't been good. Like,
objectively,
he's been productive, but like in his good games, he's also throwing like
multiple pick
2-3
sixes.
picks. And
I'll tell you who won't want to be there, though. That's Shadir Sanders. He won't be in Cleveland. It's going to have to be another quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing. Maybe they don't have the opportunities to draft one just because there's not that many good quarterbacks in the draft. So maybe bringing Jameis back is their best option. I certainly would prefer that to bringing Deshaun back as a starter. But yeah, I don't know.
It's fun until it's not with Jameis. That's all. That would be all I'd say.
But if we're talking about like stopgap type guys, would you want to pay Sam Darnold a bunch of money to come in and be that guy, or would you want to just bring Jameis back? And we've seen him take team-friendly contracts before to stay where he was. I think you could easily get him on a cheap deal and have him be that guy. And his teammates love him. There's just so many positives that kind of make football fun again in Cleveland that kind of revolve around him taking over. I would like to see that continue.
There's a good chance that the Browns look at the rest of the roster and say, we're good everywhere but quarterback. So they might draft a guy because they feel like their roster's in a good place.
Yeah.
We'll see.
We'll see where they finish, and we'll see who's available at that spot, and whether maybe Jameis could be the guy starting next year, and whether that rookie could eventually take over.
Yeah, but there's no question. He's been a breath of fresh air for that franchise, one that desperately needed it. Lastly, Jaden Daniels has been the favorite to take home Offensive Rookie of the Year for the majority of the season, but Bo Nix just keeps on gaining on him. Since week 3, Nix has a touchdown-to-interception ratio of better than 4-1 and a QB rating of roughly 96, and right now on the score bet, he has the second shortest odds to win Offensive Rookie of the Year. T, are you buying or selling Bo Nix to win Offensive Rookie of the Year?
So when we discussed this topic yesterday, I said sell, and then we were chatting before, and I said I kind of really want to buy. I'm going to say sell because the numbers are ones that I don't think he can really catch up on over the next 4 weeks. When you look at completion percentage, yards per attempt, there's a pretty decent separation between him and Jaden Daniels. But Bo Nix is going to be on your television in prime time quite a bit to close out the season. The Colts, the Chargers, the Bengals the next 3 weeks. one of those games is on primetime. They aren't all, but they're all going to be ones that are going to have the eyes of everybody because you have two desperate teams in the Colts and the Bengals, two teams that I think their offense can score points on, and a lot of teams have been able to. The Chargers, not so much, but that's a huge game for him to get the eyes of everybody. He's someone that this Broncos team is really riding because their run game stinks. Like the bottom half of the league in a lot of your major categories. These aren't tackle breakers. These aren't guys that are creating big plays. And a lot of the time being tackled behind the line of scrimmage, to be honest. So Bo's asked to do a lot. He's been solid. He's pushing the ball downfield a little bit too. A lot more than Daniels is. He's been a better downfield passer than Daniels is, even though I think Daniels is a better player long term in that stat number. But Daniels has Bo Nix has a chance. I will say that. And the odds indicate there's some chance, and I think as good of a chance as anybody, that's for sure.
Look, primetime games it's sink or swim then, right?
Exactly.
I think there's one path to him potentially doing it, and I think it would be if the Commanders somehow fall out of a playoff spot.
Right.
And that would require them to lose some games that I don't think they're going to lose down the stretch, but if they did get upset here or there, and Nick's obviously kept playing kind of as well as he has or even a little bit better, then I think he would have a chance.
Look, I will not deny that he has a chance to win when we factor in how the voters are going to treat this. But if Bo Nix wins Rookie of the Year, we need to reformat awards because that would be so ridiculous. Like, what is the bar for being the Rookie of the Year in the NFL? So you just come in.
Right. Brock Bowers should probably win it, to be honest.
Quarterback, and we're like, man, good for you. Yeah. Or we have the best tight end in the league. Like, come on.
Let's get Brock Bowers like 10 catches a week, and the quarterback situation's a little bit dicey. We'll see if Aiden O'Connell can keep playing or not. But Brock Bowers close out strong, and let's give it to him. I'm on board with that.
That's what I mean. We could potentially finish the year having a tight end set all the rookie tight end records, or even rookie pass catcher records, or we have Bo Nix plays as like a top 18 quarterback in the NFL, and we're like, wow, Bo Nix. Historic.
I think you're also, but you're being a little bit too hard on Bo Nix. I think you're not being hard enough on Jaden Daniels because technically Bo Nix is pushing the ball downfield more than Jaden Daniels is. Like average of the target wise, Bo Nix is technically, although I didn't really see that as his game, he's doing it more than Daniels is. Like he's helping the offense more than Daniels has a great run game to lean on. I think maybe Bowers is worth the investment. Maybe he's the buy in this situation.
All I'll say is that since week 5, Bo Nix has a higher EPA per play than Jaden Daniels. Like he spent a lot of the season being the superior rookie quarterback, and I'm go ahead.
We're sipping the juice of that Bengals game from like whatever that was, week 4. That every quarterback has put numbers up against that Bengals defense.
Yeah. No, let the record show. I'm making the full anti-quarterback take for this year's offensive rookie.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up because that segues perfectly in today's trivia. And boys, this is a very special trivia segment today because we have officially documentation. We have got a trivia tally courtesy of none other than our producer over here, Zachy. Thanks, buddy. So now we can preserve for posterity, and maybe we can get a close-up on that on the ISO cam. Boom. We can preserve for posterity how each of you perform at trivia, and I think it's salient to note, and probably serves you, T.
Oh, yeah.
All previous trivia results, they don't exist. They are not documented on this here tablet.
Formal protest.
Hey, record keeping didn't start until week 15 of the 2024 season.
Let's keep that thing under lock and key too. I don't want anybody sneaking in overnight.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
Changing.
No. This is precious, and it won't be tampered with. The integrity cannot be compromised. So here we go, boys. The first official trivia game, I suppose, of the entire No Timeouts run. Here we go. In the last 20 years, 10 non-quarterbacks have won Offensive Rookie of the Year. Name them. One more time. In the last 20 years, so since 2004. 10 non-quarterbacks have taken home Offensive Rookie of the Year. Name them. And we'll give the first pick to Tyler.
I don't even think I can think of a single one right now.
I would say if you do go out on the first guess, this would be a very fitting start to the first official trivia.
Yeah, I think if he goes out first guess, we have to give him a -1.
Yeah. Or just kick him off the show entirely.
I have no idea right now. I can't even start my brain with this. So I'm
go.
just going to say
Let's
Jamar
go.
Chase and move on.
Oh, there you go.
Okay. I'm safe.
Once more?
Jamar Chase.
Correct. Jamar Chase took it in 2021. Good job, Boone.
I can't believe that, like, even the recent ones I don't remember well, but Puka Nacua had to have won it, right? How on earth?
Nope.
Who won?
Rough.
Nope. You hate to see it.
Garrett Wilson.
Correct. 2022. T, it's back to you.
Saquon.
Correct. He took it in 2018. Good job. Wilkie, back to you.
Odell Beckham.
Correct. 2014.
Despite playing 12 games.
Despite playing only 12 games, OBJ in 2014 was Offensive Rookie of the Year. T?
Non-quarterback. I gotta think about running backs, I guess. I don't even have one in the holster right now. In the last 20 years?
Last 20 years, so since 2004. You've gotten 4 of them. There are 6 left on the board.
I don't have it. I don't want to waste any more time.
Wilkie, you get one here, and you're getting the first official victory.
Last 20 years.
Last 20 years.
Adrian Peterson.
Correct.
Nice.
AP took home Offensive Rookie of the Year in 2007. Dan Wilkins, congratulations. You are the first official champion in the documentation era of trivia.
You know how I knew that wasn't a quarterback year? That was the Jamarcus Russell.
Nice.
Let's go.
That's quite
There you
the line.
go. One more shot on the ISO cam, just to make Wilkie feel good. Boom. Wilkins, not the straightest one you've ever seen.
Strangest one
Anyways,
you've ever seen, yeah.
there you go. Well done. The ones you guys missed: Alvin Kamara, 2017.
Huge
Todd
year.
Gurley, 2015. Eddie Lacy, 2013. Percy Harvin, 2009. And ready for this one? Not a Lincoln, Cadillac Williams,
Right.
2005. That was a heck of a game.
The running back era.
And I love how beautifully we teed that up. And that'll do it for today's episode of No Timeouts. Thanks so much for tuning in once again. That's Justin Boone. That's Tyler McKillop. That's Dan Wilkins. My name is Jonah Birenbaum. We'll see you next time.